Hello, everyone, and welcome to NUTRINSIGHTS International. My name is Álvaro Guzmán, and I am part of the editorial staff. We are very happy to begin this new series of technical interviews with Dr. Edgar Oviedo, who is a professor at the prestigious Department of Poultry Science at North Carolina State University. Dr. Oviedo is also one of the technical directors of our magazine and a poultry consultant in several countries. And he has published more than 100 scientific articles in several book chapters. Dr. Oviedo, welcome, and it is a pleasure to have you with us.
Álvaro, it's very nice to participate in these webinars, and I hope that we have a good beginning of this series.
Thank you. So let's begin. Gut health or intestinal health has become a general term in animal production, and more specifically in poultry production. Could you elaborate on what you think is the best definition for this significant yet broad term?
Yes, Alvaro, I think that the best way to define intestinal health is when the host, the animal, in this case the bird, is able to obtain all the nutrients at the minimum metabolic cost possible, and at the same time the intestine can fulfill all the functions in the immunological, endocrinological part, and host bacteria that can coexist with the host and among all the bacteria, maintaining those populations of those that we consider negative in very low levels. So under that definition, what we want is really to have an intestine that is very efficient in digestion and absorption of nutrients. With that, we'll have very few extra nutrients to feed that normal, natural microflora. And with those nutrients that are balanced, then you can create very diverse microbiome that will normally keep the pathogens, or also the ones that have the pathogenicity capacity, in very low concentrations.
Hey, that's great. Thank you. Antibiotic-free production has become a growing trend due to global bans on antibiotic growth promoters, as well as due to consumer demands. And this situation has modified the way producers and the industry in general approach poultry farming, creating a need to find new tools and strategies that help maintain productive yields at a reasonable cost. Do you think this has drawn a greater interest towards intestinal health, and has this helped to drive research within related fields?
Yes, definitely. The current changes in the way that we manage the intestinal health in animals and also in humans has been the main stimulus to a whole new science that could be the molecular microbiology, and even all the aspects to study the interactions between the intestine and the whole body. So nowadays we know more about the microbiome, the bacteria that in the past we used to call microflora, that for 100 years were, or more, like 300 years, were only studied at the level of culture. With the molecular methods in the past 30 years, we had advanced much more than in the past 300 years. So then now we know about the importance of the diversity. We know that the microbiome and the whole group of bacteria and the prokaryotes and all the other microorganisms that we have could be more diverse than we ever imagined. Also, we know that the intestine plays a role in many different physiological aspects that we never considered before, like behavior, or even in the immunological responses. So this interaction between bacteria and the host, now we know that is fundamental for any kind of immune response and immune activity that will help to maintain the whole body healthy. So we know that mucosas now play that important role for health.
That's great. And when intestinal health is discussed, and you already talked a little bit about this, a common mistake is focusing only on controlling intestinal disease like coccidia or specific enterobacteria. And maybe this misunderstanding stems from the fact that such pathogens tend to be found in health issues associated with intestinal health or in antibiotic-free programs. However, as you have stated before, these pathogens are usually the consequence and not the cause of gut health issues. And as you point out, the actual problem tends to be associated with the presence of excess nutrients in the hindgut. So taking this into account, could you tell us a little more about the importance of enhancing nutrient digestibility to preserve normal physiological functions? And what nutritional strategies or other tools are there available to achieve this in modern poultry farming?
Mm-hmm. Well, the main function probably in the intestine that always has been recognized is for digestion. And the microbes in general that we see in the intestine, both bacteria and fungi, and even the virus that compose the microbiome, really depend on the amount and type of nutrients that we can find in the intestine. So if we are able to make that those nutrients are reduced and go to especially to the lower parts of the intestine in a low concentration, like naturally it should happen, then many of them will maintain their numbers, and also we can maintain the type of microorganisms and the metabolism that those microbes should have in each section of the intestine. Because in each section of the intestine, we should have a whole variety of microbiomes that depend on nutrient concentration. And then if we improve digestibility in the front gut, so the foregut, that when we have basically absorption at the jejunum and ileum, then the ceca will have less amount of nutrients, and then we can actually modulate the bacteria and try to maintain better balance with the host. So digestibility is the key factor to modulate, and many additives can do that. You ask for which ones can do it. We can have enzymes, we can have organic acids, we can have essential oils, and even some probiotics together with the prebiotics. This symbiotic effect can help to modulate some of the microflora, and at the same time, some of them can aid on improving the digestibility. But it's not only the feed additives, also with feed processing, we can help to improve digestibility, creating feed ingredients that are segregated according to the age of the animal and the ability to digest the nutrients that are in that type of feed, helps the animal to have a better digestibility. Applying the proper temperature, applying the proper drying temperature, even the pelleting temperature is important for digestibility. So all these factors will help us to control intestinal health through improving digestibility.
Okay, that's great. And coming back on these feed additives or tools we have to modulate microbiome, what trends do you anticipate regarding these types of additives within the poultry industry in the coming years?
Yeah, we see that enzymes could be the feed additive that is growing more in application and constant innovation and return. We started with probably phytases in the 50s and applied very much really in between the 80s and the 90s. And later we have with a series of carbohydrates that had expanded with the silanase and many others like the amylase and beta manganase and many others. And later we saw the development of the proteases. Now we have another series of enzymes that are able to help digestion with the digestion and elimination of bacteria of the cell walls that actually can also cause damage when they are destroyed normally by the normal activity of the other feed additives or even by the activity of the animal in the digestion process. So that helps with diminishing those negative results or of those lipopolysaccharides that we have on the cell walls of bacteria. But together with enzymes, there are other combinations that help to modulate the intestinal function and also even the activity of higher levels of vitamins that are also well accepted as a nutrient that help with health. So those really are kind of the ones that are moving forward faster. We have a great variety of phytobiotics, and we had also used these products for hundreds of years, and we know that they also work. The only thing is that depending on the country, they may have different activities and concentration of the products. And that could be a factor that sometimes they are more efficacious in some countries than others. And it depends on the active product that they have. That basically those are the ones moving faster. Another feed additive that could be growing pretty much will be the phages, the bacteriophages that are very specific against some type of bacteria. Other feed additives like probiotics have been there for several decades, and they probably will still be in use together with many other prebiotics and even the organic acids. However, they don't seem to be increasing or showing more potential benefits than they are already known.
Okay, that's perfect. Coming back a little bit, you spoke about feed quality and the importance of quality ingredients. Could you tell us a little bit about why must water quality be considered as an important factor when talking about gut health, and what aspects must be taken into account to assure water quality? And why is water deprivation something that must be looked after and completely avoided when trying to preserve intestinal health?
Yes, Alvaro. Well, as we know, water is the nutrient that goes through the intestine more frequently than even food. An animal or a human drinks probably twice or even more, like 3-4 times more water than feed. So the volume that we have in water really impacts many of the functions of the intestine and impacts the microflora, impacts the enzymes, the concentration of the enzymes and acids that we are going to have in the gastrointestinal tract. And it is known that some physical properties of the water, like the pH or the salts, that can have a buffering effect in the crop or even at the gizzard proventriculus level, can affect the digestion of the animal. We can actually buffer and reduce the acid in the foregut in those sections, and with that, the enzymes won't work as well. Then it's important to maintain at least the pH and trying to minimize the salts that can cause that buffering effect, or the calcium carbonate that will be on the water. Other type of contaminants in the water also can have an important impact on the motility. Like, for example, the sulfates, the magnesium sulfate could be laxative, and then it can modify the whole passage rate, and that will have a very negative effect on digestibility and also dysbiosis and creating gut health problems. On the other side, lack of water or even reducing the amount of water is how negative is the most negative effect that we can have in performance. So maintaining, for example, the water pressure in the lines is critical according to the age of the animal, because if you are using nipple systems, sometimes they depend on having proper pressure in order that they can obtain the amount of water. If they cannot obtain enough water, then they are not going to eat. And also that imbalance between water intake and also the feed intake can cause variations on the concentration of nutrients and solubility of some of the nutrients in the intestinal tract, and affect in some way the dysbiosis that we can observe and start an intestinal issue. On the other side, sometimes it's known that excess of water can also be a part, something that you didn't ask, but in general, also we need to think that animals need to be efficient in water utilization. And sometimes not only the changes in pressure in the water lines can cause that there are too much dripping, there is dripping of water in the litter, and consequently the litter can get wet, and we can have ammonia and some house issues on air quality and litter quality that can increase negative bacteria and even proliferate in some protozoa like coccidia and others that can be negative for the animal. So water management is really critical to maintain a good environment for a good intestinal health in the animals.
Okay, that's perfect. Could you briefly tell us about what health programs allow us to establish preventive actions and what biosecurity measures contribute to maintaining high levels of gut health in the flocks, and what tools are there available to measure gut health right now and overall health status? And is it feasible to implement these types of tools in different productive scales?
Yeah, let's start by parts of the Alvaro. Then
Yep.
let's see with the health programs. In general, the issue or the disease that can have a more negative impact on intestinal health will be coccidiosis. So then the programs to control coccidiosis through different feed additives that we have available, like the ionophores or the chemical products, or another way using vaccination, or lately we also have some phytochemical products that can help to reduce the coccidiosis or its negative effects in order that the bird gets immunity. All of them help. And sometimes you require all of them in a program that rotates and helps to maintain a more healthy environment, because it's also to control the reproduction of that coccidia in the environment. So that also means management on ventilation and also avoiding what we mentioned a moment ago, wet litter.
Mm-hmm.
Coccidiosis and Clostridia could be two of the most important issues. Nowadays, we have bacterians that apply to the breeders, can help with that control. Together they can control also, we can also have control for salmonella. And in general, all of these diseases need also biosecurity, as you mentioned. And the most simple factor is to avoid the entry of new strains to the environment. So having a closed system in where you are that you avoid that either people or rodents or animals or any kind of vector equipment that could be contaminated from another place bring an additional microorganism that is not known by the birds. So that it could be the most fundamental and simple factor to take into consideration. Also, the quality of the feed ingredients, making sure that some of those feed ingredients don't come contaminated with high levels of Clostridium. Always we will have some bacteria or will have some fungi. We expect that the levels of mycotoxins also will be very low, and in that way, all that will help with the intestinal health. But when we talk about health, we need to think about all possible diseases and even control of Newcastle or bronchitis or mycoplasma could be very important for intestinal health, because if the animal is sick, even on the respiratory tract, that will affect feed intake, that will affect also their intestinal function, and consequently may have intestinal health issues. Now, you ask also for markers of intestinal health, that's right?
Yes.
So then on those markers, there are, for many years, the industry and the scientists, veterinarians have looked for specific ways to understand how is the current status of the birds, of the flocks, related with one specific disease, or in general, to know if they have good intestinal health. So some index has been developed. You know that many companies have developed scoring systems where they check different parts of the gastrointestinal tract through necropsis. So then there are scores for a status of the crop, the gizzard, the proventriculus, the whole gastrointestinal tract, the small intestines, scores of coccidia, even scores on the ceca or fecal scores. So then those scores sometimes help, and many people have that data, and that helps to track what's going on. So we see a lot of issues. So we are able to detect the diseases. So that is a potential way that is already and has been used for many years. The other factor is that sometimes it depends on constant surveys and constant necropsies, and in some way that may not be always sustainable, and it cannot be done with the frequency that we need to know what's going on. That is the reason that many scientists have developed some analysis, or trying to correlate some analysis of blood or samples in the contents of the intestinal tract, or even going further with a histological analysis, or even doing analysis of the metabolites that you can find in the intestine or in the feces, on the excreta. So then with those analyses, they are able to mark what is important for intestinal health. However, not all of them are the best way to get a fast answer, because it requires time, it requires some time of analysis. So nowadays, what we are going is to trying to find with sensors, metabolic sensors, that are able to measure many of the metabolites that can be correlated with good intestinal fermentation. Something that occurs when you have a good digestibility, then the microorganisms will generate some metabolites that could be associated with a healthy gut. And the more that we can do this with the excreta, instead of using samples that have been taken directly from the animal, or it maybe can be with cloacal swabs, something that we can avoid doing the necropsis will be better. At this moment, we are still almost in the same technologies that we have used for 30 years, but very soon we have to advance to make more sustainable and to be faster in this analysis of intestinal health.
Yeah, that is great. Very interesting. So our final questions would be, could you tell us a little bit of why is it essential to improve breeder and hatchery conditions, and how is this associated with higher gut health levels?
Yes. Well, the microorganisms of an animal or of a newborn, a new hatch in this case, depends on the maternal microflora, maternal microbiomes that the hen will pass through the chick or to the poult, in the case of turkeys or dogs, through first the reproductive tract, because we now know that the vertical transmission is not only for pathogenic bacteria like it happens with salmonella. There is also a vertical transmission of some positive or commensal bacteria that populate the reproductive tract and go to in the different parts of the egg and help with the embryo development of some healthy microorganisms to respond to the colonization that they will have later on in their life. There is also bacteria that goes in the membranes of the eggshell and also on the eggshell. And when they hatch, they will be in contact with these bacteria. When they are negative, then sometimes they can start the intestinal health issues even directly from the hatch. And many times, the longer time or if they spend too much time in the hatcher, they could be contaminated. That is a potential issue for many type of bacteria like Enterococcus or even E. coli. But if we have a healthy type of microbiome that we generate with the hen, we can have also healthy progeny. If we start applying, for example, too many disinfectants that change that microflora, can also have a negative impact on the progeny. And later on, having a hatchery that is clean, that it has been properly maintained and well ventilated, and with a humidity that is just enough to have a good development of the embryos and not proliferate fungi or other pathogenic bacteria, can also help the embryo. So all these actions in management that we do through the whole process can help that the bird will create a healthy microorganisms. But it's not only that, the proper nutrition of the hen and the good management of the hen and avoiding that they have stress could help that the progeny have a good gastrointestinal development and good immunity, transfer of immunity from the hen to the chick. And the proper incubation conditions can help that the embryo develops a good intestine and also a whole system of regulation, immunological and endocrinological, that can help him to cope with the issues that they will have in the farms or in the whole life post-hatch. So then definitely all these factors play an important role to have a successful intestinal health at the farms.
That's perfect. Okay, could you just give us your final thoughts regarding the importance of gut health in poultry nutrition and production in general, and why is it important to look at it from a holistic approach? And do you think intestinal health will continue to be a subject of interest within the poultry industry in the coming years, and will it continue to strengthen its position as a driver of research and innovation?
Yes, as we had seen during these minutes and in this interview, we have explored many factors of management, health, nutrition. We mentioned a little bit even that this is the main topic of this magazine. And there are many aspects of the success of nutrition that depend on complete management of the intestinal health. That depends on management, depends on in good sanitary conditions, good biosecurity. So yes, intestinal health depends on looking at the whole system, the whole production system, even from the previous generation, in order to be successful in having that intestine to have the best efficiency at the lower cost, that it will be also the success of the nutritional work. Then for sure, this is an area that we will continue seeing more developments and continue see that we will advance more because we depend on the good management of the intestinal health to obtain the productive efficiency, the welfare, the food safety that we expect in the whole production system. So all those aspects that we just reviewed will end up affecting the sustainability of the whole animal production. Consequently, today, the gut health is considered like the central part of one health that includes even the environment, what environmental impact we are having with the animals that we work with, and how we use the nutrients. So really, this part and making more efficient those intestines in utilization of nutrients really will help us to move forward, and that is really the central part of new research that we will see in the next years.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Oviedo. It has been quite an interesting chat with you. On behalf of NutriNews, we want to thank you, and we hope to have you back for new interviews and podcasts in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alvaro, and we'll be in touch.